So more science, why not? When I first hooked up with the Archangel, Michael, a year ago, he tweeted something, physics just got exciting. And it certainly wasn't exciting for me. I wasn't enjoying it. It's exciting now. It's exciting. It's oil and water. So Leve, in the visualizations that I've taken from Leve, I come up with a two-dimensional yin-yang pattern. And that represents the motion of forces. Forces in motion, proven by Leve at AB 14. He says that there is motion in the live load. He says there are 5 loads. 3 of them are statically determinate. The others are not. That's the live load. And that live load exists. It's alive. It's in motion. So taking that idea back, here's my visualization of the two-dimensional yin-yang, turn it into a sphere. And it builds itself like this. That sphere is perfection, golden ratio, pi, 3.144. It's constructed from a series of straight lines, sufficient to create a circle. You place that, half fill it with water and oil, and remove the shell, and assume that the water and oil is standing there with no support. Half water, half oil. The oil would be on the top, wouldn't it? That support is created from the density of the atmosphere around it. And it is sufficient to hold it exactly at that ratio. And that is compressing it. So that this beautiful static split sphere, that black and white sphere that we're seeing, static, of water and oil, is under compression. And that compression creates an effect. And a film is created between the oil and the water at 2 dimensions. Just between the two. Think about the surface of oil and what it looks like. That's oil reacting with the atmosphere. You're only seeing the surface. The oil itself is just darkness. It's the surface has this refraction of light on it reacting with the water in the atmosphere. So that film is created between the two. Now, water has a negative Poisson's ratio. This is why. It's because there is an interaction with matter that creates a film. And Leve has analysed it using matrix calculus, proving that the film is in motion. So the film is in motion. Why? We've got a perfect sphere here, under compression. It's a mill pond, it's a split black and white. Leve's proving motion. Where's the motion? It's the surface. The surface between the two is in motion. And it remains in motion. Why? Because the motion of the film creates the motion of the water. The oil itself remains viscous, static. The water runs over the top now of the oil with a film, and it's able to shape it. Because oil has a plastic modulus, and so what it does is, as it spins around now, it draws up that vortex shape that I'd shown was ice and light, is actually oil. Plastic oil. Draws it up into that vortex and forms the tip. And that tip is reaching round and it's touching the film on the other side. Can you see? It's reached around, and so there's a tip of the plastic oil that's been drawn into that shape inside is now touching the other side of the film. And that has an effect. All the effects that are described in the visualizations I've done for the time particle, which are mathematically described by the work that the Pirates have done, particularly the Kalatz conjecture and all the work that arises from that, and the animations that are coming from the Desmos calculations now are so good. Because we're just removing the y-axis. The y-axis is theoretical. So mathematically, we shift it like this. The x-axis exists, but it's got a wobble on it. That wobble creates a z-plane. The z-plane creates a vector axis. which is the y-axis of the z-plane. But the z and the y are independent, linked by an axis, a single axle that runs east-west. So now when you're doing analysis, you're saying, well, if I'm doing x and y, I'm in space, so I know my assumptions are this y is just, I'm saying it's perpendicular, but I know it's not. If I wanted to adjust it to include the velocity of existence, I'd have to adjust it like that with the 137, or whatever the 137 is now, the fine structure constant, because that's where the mess is. It should be 137. So you just rearrange this to understand the relationship between the theoretical y and the y of the z-plane. And then you can see Euler linked straight back into there, that the rigid body axis theorem is solved by having a fluid bearing, and it's described by Leve and by the work that we've just done. There it is, a hemisphere, black and white. Now, if you looked at it from the outside, it would look black and white. It would look like the moon, funny enough. You'd just see two hemispheres, one water, one oil. But it would be glowing with light, because the wobble of the x-axis creates a hole, which is spinning, creates a hole across the east-west plane. There's the axle. It's a beam of light. The motion of the film inside bends it to the front face of the yin-yang. There's the wave, Schrodinger's wave, and bends that light into that pattern. And that bending creates massive effects inside with all the bendings of all the moon linkage, for example, is why you can't trust what you see, because all the light beam, which is just a straight line, is bent into springs and coils and spirals, Fibonacci spirals, funnily enough. So you cut it in half, now, this black and white sphere, and you'd see like an ear, a cochlea. There you see the black vortex and you see a white vortex going through the two eyes. And then the centre of the two eyes are, you know, where you see them. But if you look at the centre of the one eye, it's going clockwise. The flicking, so here's the black vortex, the oil, the plastic comes up and it's touching the other side of the film on the other side. What does, and it's moving, it has an effect on the tip, and it's flicking like this. Flick, 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 flick. It goes in, out, in, out, in, out. So it hits the film and it's rejected. It's unnatural. It shouldn't be on that side of the film. It comes from the other side of the film. The water is trying to create a film around this tip on the wrong side. So it just spits it out. So it's going flick, 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 flick. So one rotation, flick, one rotation, flick, one rotation, flick. So because the flicking is creating a clockwise motion, all the motion is relative to that. So all the anti-clockwise motion that's created is now become relative to that tiny little flicking motion on the surface of the wrong side of the film. And that has an effect. It extends the time. So that as it's doing a clockwise turn, it's flicked out, and there's no connection, so time has stopped. But it's in motion, it does a whole rotation and it lands back again and connects again. And that's because it's on the other side, time flows the other way, and that's called consciousness. That's the energy of consciousness. You've stretched time. In order for something to exist, it needs time in which to exist. If there's no time in which to exist, it can't exist. Because we know that it exists, we can work out why. That consciousness is the experience of plastic membrane behaving elastically. We will go back to where we started every time because our motion is elastic. It's Young's modulus. You can see our motion, stress over strain. So that's the new mathematics that we're about to build. It's got a theoretical y-axis. Rest mass assumes that the y-axis is the true axis and tries to work from there. Whoops. Welcome to New Earth.